Hey everyone, my name is Amber, also known as Prima Media, and today we're just going to be designing Paradox past Pokemon, because last time we did Paradox future Pokemon, and well, obviously we're going to have to do a sequel, right? I mean, it's just obvious, right? The Pokemon that I decided to do a Paradox form for was Mew, because Mew is one of my favorite Pokemon. It's like in the top 5 somewhere. And one thing that I really liked that Donovan did last time with the future Pokemon is that he took a theory of his and he made it into a design. And I thought that was really cool. So I wanted to do that as well. So for a while, I thought, Mew being the original Pokemon and all, I always thought that it had some links to Arceus somehow, And I really wanted to, in my own way, canonize that. So what I did is that I pretty much took the lore to the extremes. And I was like, okay, yeah, what if Mew was actually the first Pokemon? It probably looked very different back then. Like, I'm convinced that the Mew that we have now is likely not the common ancestor of all Pokemon. It probably looked more, I would say, closer to Arceus or something like that. Like, it would look very different and much more primordial and much more, prehistoric. And also have a typing swap. Because I have a theory that normal typing, because Arceus is a normal type, then that means that normal type is the original type, and that makes sense to me, because to me, a lot of normal type Pokemon, they can learn all types of moves, from other types. To me, that just solidifies that normal is this malleable type, it's a basic type, it's not really meant to represent anything, so it can become everything. That's sort of what I went with. And Psychic also being a Psychic Link and all, so... All right, I'm going to drop this. I'm going to drop it right now. Here it is.
I'm excited to
this
see
is
it.
My Pokemon. Its image, as in made in its image.
Oh, I got to zoom this in.
That's a great name.
Yeah. So.
That's amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it look like Arceus, right? So it's Arceus's first creation, next to Palkia, Dialga, Giratina. So this Pokemon was made to, sort of inhabit the Earth and put all kinds of Pokemon there. So it's normal and Psychic type, because normal it's connected to Arceus, and Psychic because it has a Psychic link to Arceus, and because, well, I didn't want to make it pure normal type. I could have done that, but I don't know. As you can see, it has, like, it resembles Arceus. It's got a little diaper on, little kind of diaper on, because I really wanted to take Mew's design, Mew's concept of being a baby, a fetus, and just take that to the extreme, right? So it's wearing a diaper, and it's also resembling, with the horns a little bit as well. And if you can see, this is kind of a really small detail, but if you look at its image's eyes, they're all kinds of colors, which represents that it has the potential to become all typings.
I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, diaper reminds me of the Zygarde stuff.
That was not intended. It's actually, but I like that though. It's just a regular Pokemon egg because they all look the same in game. So
right.
Mew was kind of the origin of that. Sort of the first egg that was, I don't know, bestowed upon the Earth or something. And also changed the tail to an umbilical cord, which connects to Arceus via a Psychic Link. Because it's like disappearing into the air.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it's gold.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was coming like a round up in front. I see it now.
The umbilical cord was what I really wanted to do because, again, I wanted to hone in on the fetus aspect of Mew, and make it more primordial, more in the earlier stages. Like, it is bigger than Mew is today. But I only really did that because it's a Paradox Pokemon, so I wanted it to be somewhat stronger. Also, it has better stats, but its move pool is not as diverse. That's because Mew is more evolved, so therefore its move pool is more diverse. So
I like that you kind of combined the two types of origin of Pokemon life. You have the theological origin through Arceus, and you have the more biological origin through Mew. And I really like the little dot that you put next to the eye. That's kind of a subtle detail that Arceus has. And I think Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina have something that's similar to that as well. So I like that you put it there, that it really it's kind of subtle, but it very clearly connects it to the creation trio.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, this really is the perfect paradox Pokemon, just, from what we've talked about with how it ties into the creation trio. Because, the word paradox is reflected just thematically, where it's like, it's a living representation of, creationism and evolution, ideas that are kind of at odds with each other and are a paradox, but you've blended it super successfully into one design. It's really cool.
I always felt like there should have been a connection between Mew and Arceus, or they just retconned their lore, which Pokemon, they're not the best with keeping up with their lore, I'll be real.
I like the visual idea of this thing. Just I could just see like this massive egg that Arceus makes, and then it just like breaks up into about 1 billion of these little guys as they like scatter towards Earth.
Yeah, honestly, that was part of my theory, because I once made a video where I talked about Arceus actually doing that, and then because Mew learns Transform, it transforms itself into the animals on the Earth, slowly transforming itself into Pokemon.
Yeah, like slowly takes over the native creatures,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
right? By
animals,
imitating them. Yeah.
Yeah, animals are early on shown in the Pokemon anime, and that was probably just because Game Freak
Right.
didn't have enough Pokemon or something. But yeah,
I also definitely like the shiny.
yeah, the shiny
So
was
it's-
just Mew shiny, but then like
Mhm.
making the gold into silver, that just seemed so obvious to me.
Yeah.
And pairing it with purple, really nice.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
um,
It's like a hint of Mewtwo.
yeah. Last
Yeah,
time
yeah.
I did a very silly mon, but now I'm like, nah, let's just do something. Well, it's still a little bit silly. I would say it's still a little bit silly, but
Mhm.
it's legendarily silly, I guess. I mean, Mew's very
Yeah.
silly.
I think I would say it's more philosophical than silly.
Yeah, that would be an accurate.
You definitely you capture that kind of sense of importance super well just through its expression. It looks kind of powerful and all-knowing, whereas regular Mew is just kind of cute and baby-like. So I like
That-
the contrast there.
Yeah,
That's interesting because I actually see its expression as kind of like sleepy,
it's
which
both.
makes sense for it being a baby,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
It's
it would be
supposed
sleeping
to-
all the time.
It's supposed to be sleepy, but hey, I mean, if it also looks very important, then I'll take it.
I see it. I see it as kind of a mix. The expression, it's like, yeah, it's just waking up into existence, but it's like got this looking around aspect to it. Like it like looks at things and just knows what it needs to do. It's already immensely wise.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see it. It's like waking up and already like taking in everything. So
Mhm.
it's already
It's the
figuring
algorithm
out the world
Pokemon.
around it.
Algorithm Pokemon. Well, Libris, you're up.
Okay, so I actually want to show you the Pokemon with before I tell you anything. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Do however you
I
want.
want to get your reactions, and maybe see if you can figure out what it's a relative of. So
Alright.
here you go.
Ooh.
Oh.
Is it it's Ampharos, that's for sure. Is it like Sceptile in the past, but then like somehow it took something from Ampharos, like common like shared DNA in the field. Like, I really like this. Wow. This is super cool. Oh my god.
Yeah, my brain doesn't know what to decide on this. Like it's yeah, I initially saw Sceptile, but then yeah, it's got aspects of Ampharos, and I'm really intrigued to know why.
It's a dragon ancestor of some kind.
Yeah,
right?
specifically, yeah.
Yeah, because Ampharos
The
has
Mega.
some of that latent dragon DNA in it somehow. So it is
Weird.
it is a very mammalian Pokemon, but it probably has some dragon-like ancestry.
Well, I mean, you basically got it. Yeah. So here's the full stat screen. So this is a
Ooh.
common ancestor
Let's shine.
of so it's a common ancestor of Sceptile and Ampharos. I wanted to do something that I wish the actual past Paradox Pokemon had done. I was looking for a common ancestor, but I wanted to do two Pokemon that are not super obviously related, but that still share a number of characteristics. So these two Pokemon are in the same egg group. I think it's the monster egg group. I should have taken a note of that. But
I think so as well.
yeah, they do share an egg group. They obviously have Sceptile and Ampharos obviously have very similar body shapes, although their
Never
pre-evolved forms, their pre-evolved forms are very different, and they both have this kind of orb motif on them. Sceptile has like seed packs or something like that. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be on their back, and of course, Ampharos has the glowing gems.
Yeah.
Oh, right. I
And-
forgot about those on its back.
Yeah. They're more prominent on Mega Sceptile, which is the other thing. Both of them have megas, and both of them gain the dragon type when they mega evolve.
Oh my god, right.
The idea is that this is a dragon ancestor to both of those. So I did my best to, as evenly as possible, use elements from both sides of the family. So at some point it diverges, and one side becomes more gecko-like and one side becomes more sheep-like, and the dragon DNA goes dormant, and that gets awakened when they mega evolve.
I was just looking it up. Ampharos is monster field, and Sceptile is monster dragon. Okay.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I wanted to give this Pokemon its own kind of identity. So obviously, like visually, it needs to harken back to both sides of what it's going to evolve into. But I wanted to make sure that it still felt like its own Pokemon, that it had some kind of conceptual core that was its own, that ideally would still connect to the two families, but that could feel its own. And it turns out, and I didn't really have this like registered in my mind until I was doing the research for this. It turns out that according to I think just 2 different Pokedex entries, Trico's tail can predict the weather. I connected that, the like weather prediction side on one side, with the kind of cloudy look of the Mareep family, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make it a cloud Pokemon. So if you look at its moves, there's like haze and mist there, but there's also more general weather moves: sunny day, rain dance, thunder, weather ball, twister. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I did struggle a lot with like balancing the features and giving it its own identity while still being able to connect it to both families. And I'm really happy with how it turned out.
It looks amazing.
The tail in particular was something that me and my patrons who were helping me out, we had a really hard time agreeing about. I had like 3 different main ideas for the tail, and there were like 2 camps of which one they liked, and this one was like the compromise. but I still like it. So
yeah, it turned out great. I really like with Iron Valiant, the future descendant of both Gallade and Gardevoir. Those Pokemon are related, right? So it makes sense. Like, it's not too out there, too weird. But the whole thing of Pokemon sharing a common ancestor, like the Dex entries talk about it a lot. These Pokemon share a common ancestor, but then you never see it. You never hear about it. It's always just like vague information, just lore. But you took that and you made your very own Pokemon with it, and it's just so cool. I really like it. I also like to me, it looks like a Pokemon that the name Radiant Fog. It looks like this magical, mystical Pokemon you would find in the middle of a forest when it's really foggy and clouds are everywhere and it's raining, and that's really the vibe I get from this Pokemon. Also the color palette, with the blue little shadows. I really like that. It seems like the clouds around its body, they can like morph, and they're always like spin like around the tail. It's always spinning and stuff. Like with Suicune's mane, I can definitely see that in motion. What I also like is that it sort of looks like a Christmas tree. which the colors mainly the green and the red, which was always a meme with Mega Sceptile, that it looks like a Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like this. I'm in love with this design. I really like it. It's
There was a version of the tail that was explicitly tree-like, and that was one of the ones that people some people really liked. I didn't quite like it because I didn't want it to just be a Christmas tree. Like, it's fine that it kind of harkens back to that, but I didn't want it to just be a Christmas tree. But yeah, you'll see it in the speed art. Probably you'll see all the different kinds of approaches to the tail. So maybe you can tell me, and maybe the audience can tell me which one you like most. But I'm happy with where it settled on
be
it.
sure to comment, everyone, or else I'll appear in your house.
Without seeing the other tail, I think you did the right choice choosing this tail, because it's neither Sceptile and it's neither Ampharos.
Yeah.
I think adding plants would made it too grassy and therefore too Sceptile.
Yeah.
Because what I like about this guy is he's not Sceptile and he's not Ampharos. It's ancestor fusion Pokemon almost.
But you can still see
He's his own Pokemon in essence, and I love that concept where it's not just a past form of a Pokemon we know, it's literally an ancestor of one or more branches of Pokemon. And I think I think it's a shame that Paradox Pokemon didn't really go more in that direction.
Right.
And
Yeah.
There is actually one more thing about the concept that I wanna highlight. So, because I was like looking for all the connections between these two families, right? And I had decided that I was going to make it a cloud dragon, but I was still struggling a little bit to figure out where the orbs would fit in. That becomes the seeds on one side, and that becomes the glowing gems on the other side. And it turns out there is a kind of washi Japanese paper that is called clouded dragon. And
nice.
and one of the things it is used for, not exclusively, but one of the things it is used for is paper lanterns. Round,
Very nice
glowing orbs.
Very nice.
Perfect.
It's meant to be.
I will add that, everything you've said about, the motifs of clouds and lanterns and flying, and it's a pure dragon type. And I know both of the prior Pokemon are terrestrial already, but the fact that you made it not a dragon flying type and just like a grounded, almost velociraptor-like creature, instead of a fantastical dragon is pretty cool.
I do see it as potentially also tying in with things like Altaria and Drampa, right? Another kind of fluffy green dragon. Explicitly, I only put Sceptile and Ampharos in there, but
coincidences are coincidences.
Yeah, and they are welcome.
So the final thing about this design is that because it's just a dragon type, right? Because it's just pure dragon type, and because Pokemon is a Japanese video game franchise, if you look at Japanese dragons, they tend to be very cloudy. So I think that's also just a nice coincidence.
There is like a clouded dragon or a cloudy dragon is a common motif in
they just float around
in
with
Japanese
magic.
culture. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where the gems come from as well. Like typically
God,
Chinese
wow.
dragons will carry, I don't know, pearls or jades or something. So, I definitely see the Eastern influence there.
Right, Ben, the floor is all yours, or I guess rather the
Cool.
Discord chat.
The virtual floor.
Yeah.
All right. So, I wanted to be kind of topical, and I started my design process after the introduction of Walking Wake. So that kind of inspired me because I wanted to do, like you, Prima, I wanted to do a legendary Pokemon because I think those are cool.
I'm very curious.
But further, I was intrigued and disappointed by Walking Wake because it fails to capitalize on, the promise of the sketch from the initial journal where it's like, it's a hybrid between all three of the beasts. So I wanted that was what I went into my design
I'm
with. I
very
was like, I'm gonna
excited
do
about this.
a hybrid of another trio, and I don't want to hype it up too much because the final design actually is not so much a hybrid, but that was the starting place, and it informed the lore at least. So I went with the Reggie trio, and I think those Pokemon are cool because I envision them as like titans who have accompanied humanity and helped them progress, or at least have existed alongside them. And each one kind of seems iterative, where it's like Reggie Rock is kind of like the Stone Age, and then it goes up to Reggie Steel or Reggie Drago, which are almost, or Reggie Alecki, which are almost more artificial and futuristic in their own way. So my thinking was, what if there was another Reggie that kind of predated all of those and was like, maybe if not the common ancestor of them, because they are all artificial, at least like the prototype that Reggie Gigas created.
I like the prototype idea.
Yeah, so I will show off my design in a second because my thinking was, what if, humanity sealed away the Reggies because they feared them. But what if this Pokemon existed before humanity and was like sealed away by Reggie Gigas itself because it was so dangerous, not
Just like
because of people's
Giratina.
fears. Yeah, pretty much. This is like the banished Reggie. So here we go.
Oh,
Oh,
Oh.
that's so cool. Oh yeah, because like magma, right? Magma and like lava, I really associate that with like prehistory, and oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I wanted to do like a tectonic plate, almost like, primordial Pokemon. Like this existed before trees or the ocean or anything. You're just like when the earth was a scorching, like, hellscape. And we don't know if Reggie Gigas is quite that old.
Oh, that's so cool.
But,
Tectonic plates. Oh, I love that. As a
Cobbled
as
purse.
a prehistory nerd, that's so cool.
the name
Because
is
like,
great.
what kind of Pokemon existed all the way back then? Like, this obviously I can imagine it. Wow, it's dual typing too. That's so cool.
yeah, so like I said, I kind of cheated because it rounds up to being just a paradox of Reggie Rock. But again, I think it works as like the prototype for all of them, just as kind of like a mineral-based humanoid creature.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And like, don't worry about like cheating or whatever with Paradox Pokemon, because I really don't think they should be having rules. And I really think that like breaking quote unquote the rules is a good idea.
I mean, that's what a paradox does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't like the Reggies that much for a number of reasons, but one of them is that they are supposed to have been basically like handmade by Reggie Gigas, but the only one that looks passably handmade is Reggie Rock. Reggie Ice doesn't look like it was made from actual ice crystals because it's too perfect.
It's too
And Reggie
smooth.
Steel and Reggie Steel obviously does not look handmade, right? And
Yeah.
even Reggie Rock, like, yeah, it's just kind of like stacked rocks, but I don't know, it's like it still has a bit kind of a robotic feel to it. But this one definitely looks like it was handmade.
Yeah,
It
definitely
looks
has that
like
feel.
it was
For real,
cobbled
yeah.
together. Yeah. If I was comparing this to the real canon Reggies, this would easily be top for me. Like it would either be my favorite or my second favorite, just because Reggie Alecki is very cute. But, so Reggie Alecki, there are some things that I like about it, but I like this much more than any of the original Reggies. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
honestly, same. And like the fact that the magma is like, it has like little cracks, that adds onto the feel of it being handmade. It's not perfect. It's also like one of the very first ones. So it makes sense that it's not perfect. It makes sense that there's like cracks and like it's jagged. Like that makes a lot of sense. Like, and like Reggie Ice was probably made a little bit later, but I do agree with that it's a little bit too smooth. It doesn't look that handmade. But this one, yeah. It also reminds me of Garganacl, which I really like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
good.
definitely trying to capture that like hulking, colossal titan feel. Just,
Yeah, you did in the
you know,
beginning
to
of
show
the
that this is like
The
twice the size of the Reggies.
the pose you gave it, I can just imagine the way it walks, where it just like as it takes a step, its whole like scarf and head and arms just kind of like hang down real quick, and then it like lifts itself up again. It's just like I don't know. I could just see this thing animated just
And you
by
can
the pose
also
you
like
gave it.
feel the earthquakes, right? And like if it's walking underground,
Mhm.
you can see like fire, like it's creating lava as it walks. You know, it's it was good for early development of the Earth, but not anymore. Like if
Yeah,
this
I can
thing existed
definitely
Yeah.
today, it'd be
picture.
really dangerous.
Yeah, I can definitely picture some smoke coming out of it as it moves around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was going with, just that sense of danger and like, you know, diving deeper into the lore, not so much with the design, but I'm glad you think it's conveyed, but I wanted to, you know, show that this is kind of a tragic Pokemon, like one that is so dangerous and so unstable that it, you know, Regigigas had no choice but to banish it or even destroy it and kill it off forever and, you know, then refine it with the future Reggies. That's kind of what I wanted to go with, like this idea that there was a prototype that, you know, that should not be brought back.
Yeah, it also when you say that, I also feel like I feel bad for it because if it was made for a specific purpose, like you know, tectonic plates and you know the typing, then it was made to be dangerous. But then it's bad that it's dangerous. It's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, same with Mewtwo, pretty much.
Yeah, true.
I definitely like the idea of it locked away somewhere, like
Yeah,
underground,
the core of
and
the
like
Earth.
yeah, like if you came across it, it's just all the rock on it is just like blackened from being cooled, and its
So
cracks
cool.
are just dark holes, and it's just like standing there still because it's been deactivated, which would be
Mhm.
kind of cool and kind of sad at the same time.
Could be a rock ice type then.
Yeah, no, I can
Ghost.
definitely picture like coming across a rock formation that just happens to look like this. And
Yeah,
then
right.
and you know, it's completely inactive. You can't interact with it, but you kind of recognize it and you know, maybe later on in the game you find one through the time machine and you're like, "Oh,
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what
for
that
real.
was." Yeah.
Or maybe you can even make one yourself.
Right.
Because the handmade feel, you know, is really strong with this Pokemon. The fact that his legs are asymmetrical, that also adds to it. It's really
Mhm.
cool. I love that. I love it a lot. It's definitely top tier Reggie design.
Thank you.
Yeah, Reggie the Reggies.
Yep.
That's pretty much all I got for Cobbled Curse.
Awesome. I love that name, by the way.
Donovan, you're up. Let's see what you made in one freaking day.
I drew the stick figure paradox Pokemon. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so I have a bit of a backstory of mine. I was originally going with the Metagross, past form Metagross, who is a ghost inhabiting the bones of other Pokemon. And I also had the idea of adding Metang and Beldum, also inhabited by bones, but they Voltroned up. So Beldum would be the head, Metang would be the chest and the arms, and Metagross would be the legs. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and drawing Pokemon covered in bones is not easy to simplify. But it was really complex and really hard to pose, and it wasn't working out. So I started thinking otherwise, and I got to looking at Roaring Moon. And I liked the idea that a paradox showed like manifestation of its mega power, like saying that mega is like a lost potential that's being brought out. And I started looking at lists of what people think Pokemon needed megas. So I ended up coming up with something that's really quite related to Cobbled Curse there.
Oh.
And I also decided to touch on something I always wanted to improve on this Pokemon, because I always thought it resembled the dinosaur, but didn't quite go all the way to that kind of dinosaur. So I went with this guy, Tectonic Shell.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
In one day, that is holy cow. That is a really sick design.
Thank you.
Really sick, because it is supposed to represent a dinosaur, but you really brought that out. Wow, and the little volcano. That's sick. That's really sick. That's so cool.
I love the Ankylosaur's tail.
I went through so many designs. You'll see on the. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do, and then I looked at charcoal in them. I was like, what if I just did 2 hefty pieces of coal that he can heat from within his tail?
Makes sense too with the literal miniature volcano on its back. That's rocky, right? So it makes sense that its tail would also be like that.
So, some of the idea was, I was thinking, okay, well, what would Torterra be like back then? And they're almost like a piece of the earth themselves, or like, a little mini ecosystem. So I figured they'd be really attuned to the planet and what's going on with the planet. And so I wrote in his description that they were really peaceful herbivores until the land started changing and like volcanic eruptions and earthquakes and stuff, and pretending not maybe the end of the dinosaurs, but like a change in the roster of what's inhabiting the world. And so they also sensed that and adapted and became these unstable creatures that were also erupting and whatnot.
What I really like about this is that it resembles a mega, like a prehistoric mega. It's got that mega feel. Because it's a little bit more complex, but that's what megas are. So you really nailed it. Like, this really looks like a mega evolution.
And I think that both design-wise and lore-wise, past Paradox have connections to megas, right? There's like Roaring Moon, obviously, but this was something that I kind of realized when I was doing mine. Mega Sceptile just looks like a past Paradox Sceptile.
Right.
Like it's exactly the same design approach for those.
Don't forget about Aerodactyl. It's got a lot of lore.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this really fits with the idea of past Paradox. I was originally I was like, I don't know if I like the size of those palm trees, but then I saw how big it is compared to the train. I was like, oh, okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does for real, because it's much bigger than Torterra is, so it makes sense that it would have bigger stuff on it.
I also liked, I went with fire, not just because of the volcano aspect, but I also like the idea that as they adapted, because in their thing it says that they can adapt to every extreme, so they've basically never went extinct. They've just kept adapting, and they eventually became the Torterras that we know. But I like the idea that the magma cooled, and as they adapted, it just became ground type from fire to ground.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. That's super cool.
Yeah. It almost makes me want to see like a Torterra of every climate, because this is very tropical with palm trees and fire.
When I was looking for ideas for this, there was a person who drew like every kind of climate. There was like an Arctic Torterra, and there was a tropical Torterra. It was like more like a sea turtle and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
That's a big Torterra fan. And the fact that it's like its mouth, right? It looks like it's about to spew out some fire.
I actually gave it like a magma tongue, so that's actually its tongue glowing there.
Right. Oh, I just really love how you made it mega. Like, it's just the right design details.
Yeah, that was the idea I was going for. I wanted to do like Roaring Moon, where it's like it's showing like the hint of a mega that could have been that we just never saw.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool, or rather, I should say it's very hot.
Do the kids still say that this is fire?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I'm sure your comments section will let you know.
Now I say something like this is fire, F air, for real.
Yeah, I really like the way that you kind of expanded on the concept of Torterra, because I really like Torterra, the original. I think it does a really good job of simplifying the kinds of things that would be on its back, right? To just be one tree, and it has, I think, 2 spikes that represent.
It has 3 mountain spikes.
3 that represent the mountains. But making it bigger allows you to put more things on its back, kind of like the Torterra from Detective Pikachu, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that one.
That was such a cool one.
Yeah, it was one of the most interesting things that from that movie, I think. But yeah, so I think this works really well. It's
I don't know if you noticed, but on the shiny, all the plants are dying.
Oh
They're
my
all
God.
brown because it's
that-
like ultra
good.
fire. It's all red.
Very nice detailing. Love that.
and,
That's
and
cool.
very common. Like a lot of grass types,
Yeah,
like
they have the autumn colors.
go autumn colors. Yeah, so that
Mhm.
works. Yeah. And I appreciate that you seem to be you're the only one who ended up doing a paradox of a single Pokemon.
Oh my God. Oh, that's correct, right? Really sick design. I love it. I love all these
There's-
designs.
And good work, everyone.